Hello everybody. Today we're doing a tutorial on this piece here, which is an album art piece that I did for a local band. This piece is a lot easier to do than it looks like it might be. It's just knowing how to use your tools effectively in Photoshop. Here you'll notice I used a really neutral background. If you come back here and look at the color and how everything melts together, this will be really helpful when you go to overlay a color. It helps it not clash with your model, and it makes it a lot easier to not have to do as many adjustments later on down the line. In the past, we've gone over how to cut out your model. Be sure that when you do that, before you transfer it over, that none of your background from the previous image is lingering, and that not too much of the image has been cut out. As you noticed here, I accidentally cut out a little more of her hair, but it actually worked well once I put the texture over it. So sometimes mistakes can be really good, but make sure that you don't get too far with the mistake to a point that you can't correct it before it's too late. Once I cut her out, I added these angel wings to her. These were a stock image from DeviantArt. You can find tons of angel wings. Now, the problem with angel wings is they can be really hard to put onto a model and make them look like they belong. And the important thing here is to keep in mind that you have these tools here in the edit menu, all these transform tools that will help you edit and warp them to your model to make them look like they're realistically supposed to be there. The scale tool, this one will just make it bigger, larger, and if you need to, it'll allow you, well actually no, this one won't. There's one that'll allow you to rotate from side to side. You can just hit Control T to get to that one, or you can go in here and use the rotate tool. As you can see, I've already set this model up, so I'll have to show you with the whole model rather than just the wings. Also guys, be very sure that you're on the proper layer before you start to do something, otherwise you might mess up your piece. My two important tools to keep in mind in this transform menu is the skew tool. It will allow you to add some perspective to some images that may not already be there if you get them as a stock image. I definitely did that on this wing right here, and I think you can see that. And another really good one in this menu to keep in mind is the warp tool. And with this tool you can move things around with these anchor points to wherever you want them to be. That way when you get the image, if it doesn't quite fit with your model, you can warp it, skew it around, make sure that it really flows with your model, and make sure it actually feels realistic. Like her shoulder, like her shoulder up here is up, so you want to make sure this wing's up a little bit. And I actually probably should have pulled this wing down just a tiny bit to match this angle here. And you also want to keep in mind this shoulder's closer than that one, so you want this wing to be larger than this one back here, so that the brain understands, okay, this side of her body is closer to me than this side of her body. This is important to keep in mind. Perspective will go a long way in any art piece. After I did that, I copied the lower half of her torso, made a new layer, and smudged the edges a little bit. Once I did that, I went into here. There's, in the filter menu, there's the blur menu, and this lovely little tool called the Gaussian blur, which I use to make sure that everything melded together. You see how this works? It's a wonderful tool. But I made sure it melded together from here on up, since this was actually two different pieces, her lower torso and the rest of her. After I was happy with how this misted area on her looked, I went and I got you can use a brush for snow or dust here, both will work really well. And I made sure it was the same color as her skin, and I just, dabbed that around the edges here so it looks like she's coming up out of the water, like she's forming out of it. And then to give it the dirt look that I have, like this dirty, dusty look that I had in this image down here, this will be more significant. once you add this blue layer here. As you can see, oops, wrong layer, right here, this is what you'll end up with, this dust look I was talking about. And this guys really was the hard part. From here I just got a simple grunge paint texture. I chose a blue one and I used the whole layer. I put it on soft light and then 26%. Let me move it up to 100% so you can see what the layer looked like originally and put it on normal. So this is what my original grunge texture looked like. And like I said, you want that on soft light and 26%, and this will just give the background and the foreground a little bit of noise to bring it together. You can see here the difference it brings, and it makes the angel wings, the highlights in them, pop a little bit. I also used the same layer here to cover her, except this time I put it in overlay, and the easy way I did to cut this out was I got this tool right here. I went onto the layer with my model on it, and I just selected the whole model. And if you do this, if you hit select inverse, you can then delete everything on the outside that you don't want. This allows the texture that you want over the model to fit the model really well. After this, I went ahead and I added this blue gradient here. Normally I would put it on soft light. Whoops, accidentally put her on soft light. That's not what we wanted. Let's fix that real quick. It's normal. Normally when I do a gradient I would put it on soft light, and I did here. I've left this one at full opacity, but sometimes you just want to change the opacity a little bit to make sure that the color flows really well. And as I told you guys before, you can see how this gray background really helps this color meld throughout the piece without a lot of effort. Now for the bottom of the piece here, I went ahead and copied the model layer and dropped her down here and lowered her opacity. That's all you have to do to get a reflection. It's not very hard. Just make sure everything's on the right side. Make sure that everything lines up as well, like her wings here, her elbow right there, and her other wing right here. You want to make sure that the image isn't inverted, otherwise people will notice that and they'll be a little confused and it won't look quite right. From here I did crop the piece and I started working on it in another Photoshop document just for the ease of not having so many layers. And here you can see this layer here that I used to make the lighting with. In order to get one of these layers, you want to make a new layer, go into Edit, Fill, and then you want this option Use on 50% gray, and then hit OK. Now this will make your whole screen gray, and this is great. You'll want to put this in the soft light layer, and then you can use your burn and dodge tools right here. This one's burn, and then if you hold it down, see if it'll work with me here. This one right here is dodge. This will make things lighter, the burn tool will make them darker. And for this you'll want a pretty large brush, but you do want it to be semi-soft. And this one I just burned the edge here on this side, and then I made it lighter on the other side so you could feel the moonlight really coming down. So let's look at the image I originally had. And I lightened her up in the center too so that she really was the spotlight of the piece, and also the moon's right here, so you want that center piece to be a little bit brighter than the rest of it. Normally I would take this dodge and burn tool on a second layer just like this, the Edit, Fill, 50% gray, then soft light, and go over some of her features where I wanted dark spots to be and light spots to be, but it really wasn't necessary on this piece. But it is a good technique to keep in mind. It really helps out with lighting, and lighting really is a crucial factor in any art piece. It can make the difference between a piece being a beginner's piece to an intermediate piece. Just really make sure that you keep that in mind. It can add a lot of depth to a piece, or it can take it away, whatever you want to do with it. And the last thing I did in this was I just added, my copyright symbol right here. So that was really easy. This is one of the easier pieces I've done. Let me guys know in the future if you have any questions about any previous pieces I've done, any previous tutorials, or if there are any tutorials you'd like to see in the future. Thank you so much for watching.